G'day, guys. Welcome back to Supercoach with DR and welcome to the Carlton Supercoach team preview. I tell you what, absolutely pumped today. I've got two legends in the house. The first man is with me most of the time around here. It is Spills. Mate, how you going? I've heard that you may be feeling a little bit seedy this morning. What did you get up to last night, my friend?
Yeah, very, very dicey today, Gio, and g'day to you as well, Janath. I've had a bit of I had the day by day festival yesterday up in Bendigo, and yeah, it was pretty good. Had the presets there live, and like Jordan Brando, some real pretty heavyweight DJs, and but yeah, coming off second best on the Sunday, boys. So yeah, it might not be my finest work today, but I'll give it a crack and dabble in, and I'm looking forward to a really serious chat about these Carlton boys. Far out, there's some good picks. So yeah, can't wait to dive into this one, legends.
Well, we do have the best man around for any sort of Carlton news and Supercoach news. It is my good mate, Janath. Janath, how are you, my great friend? And tell us a little bit about yourself, mate, and your Supercoach experience for those people that may not know you as well as I do.
Cheers, DR. Cheers, Phil. So I'm Janath, was on the channel a couple of times last year. Medical researcher by day, Supercoacher by night. 3 top 1.5k finishes, a top 150 in there as well. I love Carlton. Absolutely get knocked down every single time we lose. It's expectations. That's the killer right there. When you think you're going to make the top 8, you don't. It's very difficult. But no, we're looking forward to a good season this year for sure.
Fantastic, mate. Fantastic. I tell you what, you talked about doing some medical research there. You have done some awesome Supercoach research for us today. You sent me through a Google Doc last night and I opened up and I thought, geez, I tell you what, this bloke has done his homework and I'm really, really looking forward to this chat today. But you obviously are a Carlton supporter. Tell us, who's your favourite Carlton player of all time? You know, we can go back to the 80s. You're probably not old enough to go back to the 80s, Janath. You are a bit of a spring chicken compared to myself, mate. But tell us, who is your favourite Carlton player of all time and why?
I'll have 2. So when I was growing up, it's probably like early to like mid 2000s. From there, I was going to start supporting Carlton and saying Chris Judd, when he first came, obviously comes over from West Coast. Actually provides a bit of success for the Blues in terms of finals and all that. But my favourite player growing up was Brendan Favola, and then he had his urinal instance and his Brownlow instance and left us. But no, he was. I still don't forgive Clarker for what he did, and the last round 2008 robbed him off his ton, getting onto the ground by putting about 4 players on him. Nah, can't forgive him. But no, but. Juddy to Fev were back in the day, and they add a little bit of Murph in there as well.
Oh, it's hard to go past. I'm spewing on Murph as well because he could have been a Brisbane father-son with after the great John Murphy was a Fitzroy player as well. So never really forgiven Murph, but he was an absolute superstar. He was an absolute ripper. Obviously captained the club, and one of my brother's best mates actually roomed with him for a few years as well. Adam Koff. I think he was playing for Port at the time in the VFL. So, yeah, heard that he is an absolute top bloke, Mark Murphy as well. But, Spills, what do we reckon, mate? What about these expectations for the Blue Baggers going into 2023?
Yeah, look, it's funny how you say so. I just start off so red hot, and then yeah, come sort of September they crash and burn. I don't know if they're the first team ever to be in the 8 all year and then not be in the 8 after round 23. So quite unfortunate. And if anybody deserved that 8th spot, you just feel like it should have been the Blues. But look, Janath, I think they're going to be better for that. I reckon they're honestly going to come back in 2023 more hungry, and they're actually going to have to work for it. You know, finals don't just come that easily. Being an Essendon supporter, I know all about that. We haven't won a final in quite a long time. More days than I've had hot dinners, boys, in terms of finals, but that's another story. But Janath, what do you reckon? Like, what are the expectations? Are they finals? Are they finals must? Are they going to make it? Are they going to back it up and not make it, or you know, what's the go of your boys, mate?
Well, I reckon personally, I would, if we were to sneak into the finals without winning that final game, I would rather the loss like that, get them hungry, like you were saying, is is those are the sort of experiences you sort of build off of. But if we sort of just tumbled Stephen Bradbury our ways into the finals at the end, it wouldn't have really felt it. We would have probably got rolled in the first round by Fremantle. Wouldn't have really meant much, I guess, in terms of, oh, here we are sort of thing. But now positive vibes all around the offseason. Not sure if you guys know, but a lot of the guys got married. Cripper's got married. They're having kids. Jack Martin's had a kid. Zach Williams, unfortunately, had a kid, got engaged. So there's a lot of good vibes going around. Jack Silvani got engaged. So there's a lot of good vibes, family vibes going around the club at the moment. I think this will be the sort of springboard for next year. Everyone signed on. Charlie, Harry signed on. Doherty's also, I think, signed a contract extension recently. So except for TDK. So there's we've sort of gone away from the Steven Silvani throw the full kitchen sink at players now. It's more so taking salary cuts to keep the core together. So hopefully the King, Tom DeConning, will follow suit.
Yeah, look, you had a lot of injuries come late last year as well. Like clearly without Welsh and Hewitt, obviously like really key prospect midfield. So it is quite understandable. I think they're really important players, especially Hewitt. I reckon he sort of changed the structure so well, and Kennedy as well. I mean, one of the best. Was it a JLT game? One of the best JLT games I've ever seen against Melbourne. I mean, what was it? 40 disposals, 3 goals, or something like that. Nearly 30 contested. So yeah, we know what he can do. So look, I'm not the biggest fan of the Blues, mate, honestly, but I really hope they do succeed, and they deserve to play finals after what they've been through and like how they've rebuilt their team so successfully. And Michael Voss doing great things, boys. So yeah, should be good.
Yeah. The great Vossi. Bit of Brisbane influence in there, mate. Never goes astray, does it? But a good point that you made as well, Janath. And I think it's so important these days is, the whole mental health, how things are going off the field. So I think if things are going really well off the field, then that can also translate on the field as well, mate. So really good to hear that there are some real positive vibes coming out of Carlton this year. But look, as I mentioned before, you have done a ton of research. You've done a bit of work here on who you think may be in the best 22 come round 1, but then also what you think the best 22 looks like when everybody is fit and available. So we're going to get into our first slide here, mate.
Yeah, so the best 23 is mainly based on a couple of factors. One is how we ended last year, especially with the defensive structures, that sort of thing. So you can see that I've gone with Weathering, Young, McGovern, and Marchbank off the bench. We had a 4 sort of tall defensive structure at the end of last year. Product of missing a couple of smaller defenders, but also think that Vossi prefers playing that way, allows McGovern or Mitch to not be so accountable for a defender, which I know doesn't seem right for a defender, but that's just the day and age of where we are right now. And it's mainly based off of a midfield structure, which a lot of people have been saying is hard to decipher, but as a Carlton support, it's actually not that difficult to understand the basic premises of it. So one of the major things that I know a lot of analytics do is trying to create the perfect center bounce composition where you don't stack it too much with attacking mids versus stacking it too much with defensive mids. So what Carlton does a lot of is it creates a mixture of pure mids, inside, outside mids, and defensive mids. So you have a combination of those. And if you ever look at the CBA tendencies, it's often one of each type. So Patrick Cripps and Matt Kennedy play very similar roles. Obviously, Patrick Cripps is better than Matt Kennedy, but it's the same premise there. George Hewitt, Sam Doherty, they're both defensive mids. By nature, they're more in the tackling type, getting in and under the ball, trying not to let it go out the back of them. And then you have your inside, outside mids. So Adam Chera, Sam Walsh. But one of the key things you see there is there's not going to be any Sam Walsh for probably the first month of the season. So you're mainly seeing Adam Chera will be in that inside, outside mid role. One of the things in preseason I've been keeping a close eye on is where Blake Akes is playing. We've seen that. I've seen at least a couple of photos where he's getting clearances as an inside, outside mid. So if I was to make a judgment call right now, I'd suspect that Adam Chera would have more than 80% CBAs in round 1. And then the others, Cripper, Kennedy, Doherty, Hewitt, will feed into that rotation as well. Doherty is a very interesting one. We'll get into some statistics a bit later, won't we, DR, about his stats with Williams and with Walsh. and without them as well. So they'll be good. Quite interested to look into that for sure.
Yeah, super unfortunate, isn't it, about Zach Williams? He obviously came across on a pretty lucrative contract, but just has not been able to get his body right. Such a talented player. So super unfortunate. And look, given the fact we've just brought up Zach Williams, it's probably a good segue into our defenders for this year. So let's get into it. The first bloke we've got here, I must admit, I had not really considered before I actually saw this slide that you put together for us, Janath. It is Adam Saad. So in 2022, as you see there, 21 games, average of 103.1, comes at a price of 567,900 this year. Tell us about what you think about Adam Saad, Janath, and if he's on your radar for this year as a potential premium pod in our backlines.
I can't speak highly enough of Adam Saad. He's one of my favorite players. We get the wolf chant going for him when he kicks it with his left foot, even if it's a miniature one. It doesn't make much sense, but we love him. We love him at the Blues. The key stat I'm seeing there is without Williams and with Williams. That's a 18-point difference. That's huge. And a lot of that is attributable to the dot point that we have there. About 3.1 kick-ins per game without Williams, compared to about 2.1 with Williams. So that contributes to that. For the viewers, W/O's without and W/is with. Just bear that in mind. And with Doherty, something that we're seeing there is that he plays better with Doherty having less than 50% CBAs compared to more than. So That's a bit interesting. Only 2-game sample size because Doherty didn't play much in the mids until late in the season last year. But it is quite interesting. It's sort of if he can average 110, he's got value in him at 568k. Like you've got your top 5 defenders, your Doherty, Stewart, Dawson, Sinclair, and Sicily. You've got those 500-600k defenders. They're probably maxed out in price. Like they're not going to go up much, you would think, but they can come down a little bit. Saad at 568k could pose that ideal sort of poddy type that flows underneath. I think at the moment for my team personally, I'm considering between Saad and Doherty. Really based on if Doherty gets those midfield minutes, which we'll get to. But I think one of the big things I'm keeping in mind is the stats without Williams and with Williams, which is quite fresh off the press, happening just a couple of days ago. But that's really, really stark difference there.
It sure is, and it does show the impact of one player out of the side and how that can really have a positive impact on some other players. And it seems like that's the big key here to the value or potential value that you might be talking about. Without Williams, 109.9, and with Williams, closer to the 90 mark. So a lot of meat on the bone there. It's getting me interested, Janath. It's getting me really, really interested. You're saving a bit of cash, aren't you? So 30 to 40k, even up to 50k on the top 5. What do you reckon, Spills?
Exactly.
Adam Saad.
Look, for a trader, DR, I think he provides a little bit of value in defense. I think I'm definitely going to go for him in draft, 100%, if I can get my hands on him relatively early. In Classic, I'm not sure. I probably like Doherty just a little bit more, 100% we're going to touch on him. But, yeah, that is a fascinating stat, Janath, and without Williams in the team, like 92.1, and then a staggering, like, round that off to 110, if you will. So, yeah, that's definitely getting me tempted at 567k. That because I'm actually running with a Hayden Young type at D2 at the moment because I've stacked up my midfield and I'm really struggling to get to Dawson. That 100k is just so critical to find. So I like the value, and if that's going to be the case without Williams in the team and he starts providing us with some really good run carrying some good numbers off half back, I'm genuinely starting to warm up and to think about considering it. So look, I'm not sure, boys. He's definitely more relevant. If Williams is fit, I think you can sort of like overlook him completely and go, yeah, we'll pick him in draft if he's available. But now he's all of a sudden so relevant in Classic, and yeah, I'm intrigued, lads. I am bloody intrigued. These numbers are quite appealing. So yeah, don't mind it.
Well,
if
it
I could
seems
add
like
just
he's
a couple
in
more
competition.
things. Go on, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was going to
Leah.
say it seems like he's in competition with Sam Doherty. Saad or Doherty, possibly one or the other. But sorry, mate, what were you going to say there, Janath?
So just a couple of other things on this is that Adam Saad, Spills would be able to testify for this, never misses games. I think he missed a game last year because of COVID, but he's probably one of the most durable players in the league for that matter. And the other thing to consider here is that he actually had a 20-point increase in his average from his first season at the Blues. So that's a stat I'll get into when we talk about Adam Sherrer's possible second season breakout. But he has so much more he can get to. Like 103.1 is not his peak. He can go more than 103.1 this year. And we saw if Williams didn't play all of last year, he would have gone above 103.1.
Yeah.
Well, that's what the data suggests, isn't it? Exactly what the data suggests. Well, let's look at the man that he may be competing with for a spot in our sides, and that's Sam Docherty. So there's been much more talk about Sam Docherty as compared to Saad in the preseason, and we know why. Had a red hot last year. Was it? I think it might have been was it his best season average of his career? Was it second highest? He did have another great year, didn't he? A couple of years ago, before he obviously got a little bit crooked there.
2016.
But you've got some great stats. Is that right? Yeah. Well, I remember back in the day, he was an absolute premium, bona fide premium, and really came back strong last year. He wasn't on my radar whatsoever last year, but I did end up bringing him into my side. I think it was early to mid-season from memory. But look, we've got some great stats again here without Williams. We're talking some CBAs. And I think another reason why people may be interested in Docherty this year is all that talk of some early midfield time. You've obviously got some injuries in your midfield at the moment. We know that Walsh won't be available for at least the first few games of the season. We can see his average error in 2022, 110. He is one of the big five, coming at 603K there. 54 kick-ins in 13 games without Williams versus 11 kick-ins in 9 games with Williams. So that's a really, really interesting stat there, Janath. Tell us a little bit about...
But if you have a look at the data, without Williams, 15-point less average. So it doesn't make much sense, does it? Maybe kick-ins aren't as important for Docherty as it is for Assad.
Talk us through this, Janath. Talk us through this, mate. Is this good or bad? Is this good or bad?
All right, let me walk you through it. So what we're basically saying is in 13 games without Williams, he averaged about 4 kick-ins a game, and with Williams, about 1 kick-in a game. But if you see there, without Williams, he's averaging 15 points less than when Zach Williams was playing. So even though he's got higher kick-ins without Williams, Sam Docherty is not a type that relies on kick-ins to boost his scoring. I know in round 22 and 23 when he was in the midfield a lot, he was getting 8 to 10 tackles a game. That's 40 points right there. So unlike Saad, who may be a bit more reliant on his kick-ins to boost his scoring, with Docherty, it's not so much. I must add one thing. When I was doing the data here, it doesn't account for how many kick-ins were taken out of the square. So I was just looking at, if you have the opportunity to take a kick-in, what did you do with it? Did you have it? That sort of thing. So obviously, if you take it out of the square, you get the points. If you don't get the points. So that's something just keep in mind. But if we consider Saad's experience without Williams and Docherty's experience without Williams, you'd be saying, I think I want Saad here. He's got a much better average without Williams. Docherty has a much worse average without Williams. But it's pretty basal level there, because I think the second and fourth statistics, they're above 50% CBAs, and with our Walsh statistics, when you put them together, if Sam Docherty's in the midfield, that is peak. That's exactly what you want in the Supercoach defender. 129.5 points per game when he had more than 50% CBAs. And without Sam Walsh, he was averaging 141, which was a combination of 144 in round 1 against the Tigers and 138 against the Pies in round 23. That is ridiculous.
They are good numbers, aren't they? Well, given the fact that Williams is now gone for the season, do you think that Docherty may be shoved down back again now, mate, and they may look for someone else to fill that Sam Walsh midfield void? Or do you think that they're still pretty keen on Docherty being the man short term anyway?
I think short term, he is going to be a midfielder. That's just my personal take. In the round 1 sort of configuration I had, that was what I had Doherty as, is a defensive midfielder, because he brings something, just a touch of class, even if he's behind the ball at stoppages around the ground. He just brings that extra bit of just class to penetrate ball through the middle, for instance, to open up the rest of the ground. But the other problem sort of conundrum we have at the Blues is Nick Newman didn't play from the Adelaide game onwards at the end of the last year. He is massive in terms of their defensive structure. So if you've got him there, you sort of lose a bit of that rebounding halfback prowess that we would have had. And then add on to that Jordan Boyd, who was one that was really hyping up this year. He's got a stress fracture in his foot. And he's probably out for a good 3 quarters, at least half to 3 quarters of the season. So I can definitely see Sam Doherty going back into defense when Sam Walsh comes back. No doubt about it. It's just about, when does Sam Walsh come back? Do you want to capitalize on those first couple of weeks and just hold through? It's the questions that's got to be asked as a super coach, as a super coacher. Spills, what do you reckon at the moment? If you're making your team right now, Doherty or Saad, if you had to choose one of them, based off this and the previous
situation. Yeah, it's a sticky situation, Janath, because what I sort of think about is that game that the Bombers have in round 13. And when I go to that game, like, I want to be cheering the player, not booing him. So just on that, I'm thinking I love Saad as an option, but I'm not going to be able to boo him, because you don't want to boo a bloke that's in your team. Like, you want him to do well, but at the same time, like get stuck because you've a trader. But Doherty is a star, and what I really do like about Doherty, boys, is that, I mean, he plays the Tigers round 1, and if he's playing midfield, he's going to score at least 140. He's the safest VC for round 1. I do like it, boys. I love Doherty as a pick, and just can't get him in. Like, it's always keep leaning more towards Dawson over that spot, just on the consistency. At least you sort of know what you're going to get. But with Doherty, there's just so much upside. But I mean, these numbers with Williams, like, that's amazing. I mean, you wouldn't have even known, like, nearly 120. But without him, like, that's a bit of a concern. You probably want a little bit more than that. Just depends how much mid-time he's going to play, and if they've got enough rotations to fit him there. I do worry when Welsh returns to the team. Is there still going to be a spot in the midfield? Is his role going to sort of deteriorate, and then he'll score low hundreds through the mid patch of the season? Maybe we can probably pick him up for a lot cheaper than he's priced at currently. But in terms of value, I think I'm leaning towards Saad. And if I'm building my team around Carlton players, I reckon I would pick Saad over Doherty currently, just on those amazing stats and how much he will actually benefit without Williams in the team. So, look, I'm tempted, Janath. You've absolutely persuaded me here. I've ruled out most Carlton players. I mean, the only Carlton player I've got in my team currently is Cowan, but now there's some serious potential, and definitely going to be tinkering around the side, and it might be a team update coming soon for a lot more Carlton players. What about yourself, DR? How many of these blokes are you considering of selecting? Because there's some good pickups here, boys.
Yeah, look, Doherty was the only one that's really been on my radar. I must admit, as I mentioned before, Saad just was a bloke that I just pretty easily skipped past. But look, going back to Doherty for a sec, I think he's probably a player that I'd prefer to start rather than pick up during the season. And the reason why I say that is because he's going to be in that mid, or we're predicting that he's going to be in that midfield for the start of the season. I think that's where he could get a really big spike in points. And then if he goes down back, I think that average probably decreases, but you've already had that bonus of, let's just predict a month in the midfield. So that's the reason why I'd much prefer to start him, because I think if you look to jump on him as a defender, I probably don't like it as much. So I think if you're keen on Sam Doherty, probably start him round 1 rather than plan to upgrade to him, would be my opinion anyway. And in regards to Saad, I need a little bit of time to think. Because, as I said, I just did not consider him. But now, what a potential sneaky pod we could have. And that's why I love getting people like the great Janath onto the pod, because I just did not see anything in him. But
if for your viewers, if you want to think about it, I guess from my perspective, if I'm playing a team, I'm thinking, okay, if Saad and Doherty were the same price, that's the first thing is, if they were the same price, who would I want? And if I say here Saad, then it doesn't matter because he's cheap anyway. But if I say Doherty, then the question becomes, okay, is Doherty worth 36K more than Saad? What does that do to the rest of my team? Where do I need to restructure to fit Doherty in? So those are probably the two sort of questions for any sort of conundrum you have. Firstly, if they were the same price, which player would you want? Secondly, if you choose the player that's more expensive, how does that impact the rest of your side? And you go from there making decisions. Makes it so much easier.
Great advice. Great, because 30 odd K when it comes to selecting a starting side can actually go a long way, can't it? I don't know how many times there's been where I've gone to get my last bloke in and you're like even 2-3K out. You're like, oh no, then you need to try to tinker again. So 30 odd K can make a big difference. That's a really good point that you bring up, Janath.
Yeah.
If you think that they're going to basically average the same, then the decision could be a lot easier, couldn't it? You just go down.
Side it is.
Yeah, exactly. And some people do love a really good pod as well. I never say select a pod just for the sake of getting a pod in your side. But if you genuinely think that he can match it with some of the guys that you're paying around 600K for, it almost seems like a bit of a no-brainer to select him over one of these blokes, mate.
Just real quick, Janath. So in the first 5 weeks of the season and you're building a team, who do you think is going to average the most at D1? Would you pick Tom Stewart, James Sicily, Jack Sinclair, or would you pick Sam Doherty just on that midfield first 5 weeks? What do you reckon? Like, is he the man? Just at the start.
I don't think Tom Stewart's the man at all because I don't think they have a game at GMHBA until round 8. And DR, you would know I'm the biggest Tom Stewart advocate. I had him in whilst no one else did when he had his
You did great, man.
He had a bit of stuff at the start of last year with the baby, with his new baby, all that. No, I think Sam Doherty. The other thing, I know we're sticking on Sam Doherty for a while here, but the potential DPP at round 6, is that worth the extra 36K?
Yeah,
possibly. So if he plays a midfield role and he averages 130 and he has DPP by round 6 and you don't have him, you're like, oh, end my Supercoach season now. So
yeah,
he has the potential.
When I log into Supercoach next time, I'm getting rid of Stewart for Doherty. Would that be a good decision?
Oh, I don't think you need to rash it out right now. There's plenty of time, plenty of preseason games to look at. But the thing with Tom Stewart infuriated me last year was he just gets tagged out of games too easily. He looks disinterested. The ball's not down there much. So when it is, you want him to have the ball, but when he's getting tagged, he's nowhere near it.
He doesn't care, does he? And it shows. It shows when he's Carlton blokes off the ball. So yeah, there's a lot of disinterest with Tommy Stewart, but that's another story, boys. Sorry, DR, you can move on now. If
Stewart becomes the captain, though, Stewart becomes the captain, whole other story. This is all the other off-field stuff you've got to consider. If he's the captain, he can't be belting blokes off the
exactly right. He's got to pull his finger out
behind the ball.
100%.
Yeah. All right, DR, over to you.
Man, I'm just throwing away the key for Stewart. What are you like doing to me?
Why not?
Oh, I thought at least I've got one defender that's absolutely locked in. I don't have to worry about, okay, one's in. One's just in like Flynn. Bloody hell, I need to go and find the key again, possibly. Oh, I'll tell you. Possibly. Look, let's get on to these next defenders. I've been trying to do it for the last 5 minutes. Let's get on it, right? Caleb Marchbank's the first guy. I don't know how relevant he's going to be, Janath. I did notice that you did have him in your round 1 side, but you didn't have him in your best 23 when everyone was fit and available. So tell us what you think about Caleb Marchbank. Is he a pretty easy skip due to the fact that you don't think he's got great job security? Or do you think there's a chance that he may be able to hold on to a spot for at least maybe the first half of the season if all things go well, mate?
Well, I guess when you're looking at a rookie, there's sort of 3 key things. You've got the scoring potential, you've got the job security, and then you've got what the other sort of thing is how much do you need to average to get the 150K, make up either the trade or to make up starting him. So he needs to average about 75 to gain 150k. Now he's averaged 60 to 65 from 2006. I think it might have been 69 in one of those seasons, sorry. From 2016 to 2019. He hasn't ever gone into the 70s. He can get a 70 here or there, but he hasn't really done that. He's an intercepting defender that plays more of a lockdown role than McGovern. So McGovern he's a defender, but he plays a very high intercepting role. Marchbank doesn't have as good a kick as him. And also he's on a modified program. Carlton have sort of rolled back how some of our boys are having their preseason programs. Jack Martin's another one. History of soft tissue injuries. So they're getting a modified program. So I don't think Marchbank, he will probably play in round one, in my opinion. But I think that someone like a Jordan Boyd, when he's healthy, would be in the best 22 over Caleb Marchbank. That's just my take on it.
Yeah, he's a player that I actually have followed quite close because I actually work with his cousin at school, and I'm always asking, how's he going? How's he going? And it just seems like it's always the same story. He's in rehab, he's recovering. He just seems like one of those blokes that just cannot get their body right. So I think that's another thing that you need to add into the mix here is that durability concern that we may have for Marchbank as well. So I think if you add all of this together, the fact that he's never averaged over 70, he needs a 75 to get you that magical 150k. Question marks about whether or not he's in the best 22. Injury concerns. He's probably one we can, I think, skip over. Spills. No interest at all, mate.
Just too much carnage involved for me.
Yeah.
I think at that price, I mean, I'm 100% picking Goda and Jimmy.
Yeah,
and
agreed.
Maybe even Wilmot. Like I think you can field those guys with confidence and know that they're going to deliver. I just think there's a little bit too, I don't know, like speculation with Marchbank. Whether he's fit or not, I don't even know. Like it clearly says right there that he needs to like average 75 to gain 150k. I think that's pretty far fetched. I reckon there are blokes that are cheaper that will do so, and I think Jimmy will out average that. So, that's an interesting one. But what I find more interesting, boys, is this average that Lockie Cowan has, 141. I did not know that. Ranked third in the comp behind Ashcroft and Sardis. Boys, what do you reckon? No Williams. Is this bloke going to get a spot down halfback? Because we know he's got a raking left peg. A little bit of Hayden Young about it. So, look, I think everyone should be locking this bloke in. But what do you reckon, Janath, on this Cowan?
I think he is a good player. Now, a lot of whether or not he gets an early debut will be dependent on what Doherty does in the first couple of weeks. Because if Doherty's in the midfield and he's playing a good midfield role, we're not going to take him out of the midfield to facilitate the loss of run and carry for Williams, because you got Lockie Cowan, 141 Supercoach points per game. When I was looking up that statistic, I was like, oh. As soon as Williams went down, it's like, here's the next what's his name? With a pig. Alex Witherden 2.0, Nick Newman 2.0 when they were both rookies.
Yeah.
He gets a game. He loves to run, loves to launch it. The other thing is a lot of NFL fantasy. When we play NFL fantasy, you take into account when a player is drafted to consider what the team thinks of him. We traded our second round pick this year to Collingwood to pick him at pick 30 last year, which says that we rated him. He was sliding down boards for no clear reason, but we wanted him and we got him. And it wouldn't surprise me if we got an early game. 117.3k defender rookie. That's brilliant.
Another thing, Janath, is he's the first picked. He is pick 30, but he's actually pick 1 in terms of general defenders. No other general defender went before him because there wasn't much scope for that. Clearly, a lot of midfielders, key forwards, key defenders, but general defenders, he is the number 1 pick. So I think he pick 30 doesn't do him justice. He's much better than that. So I'm expecting him to play in round 1, I think. I reckon he'll come in for Williams, honestly. I'm not a Carlton man like myself, but I reckon he could be best 22. Just, he's just got such great ball use. And I think the Blues need that composure down there. I think he'll fit right in. He'll be a very nice apprentice for Sam Doherty, and he's in good hands. So hopefully gets a game. Like, yeah, I really like him.
He does.
And,
The one thing
Tassie boy.
the one thing I'm
No, you're
concerned
right,
with
no.
Cohen is that Vossi last year as well, he doesn't blood his rookies straight away. Like Jesse Motlop had an extended run in the VFL. He knew that he could play round one or he'd be
Yep.
close, but he didn't want him to play round one. You sort of wanted to get a couple of VFL games into him, which is what I think might happen with Cowan. And you just replace him with a Nick Newman sort of type. But if he plays round one, lock him in. This is the case. Throw away the key. If he plays round one, he's got good job security because, as I said, Bossy doesn't put in rookies in round one. Generally, DA, you probably know better from the Brisbane days how that went. Did he put any sort of like, not like Will Ashcroft types, but any sort of like lower or mid-range draftees in straight away?
I think that's the way that he's looked at things traditionally in the past, Vossi. But look, Cowan hopefully gets a game. I think there's a fair bit of competition down back. And I tell you what, hopefully trading up to him worked better than trading up to Stocker last time, mate. Sorry, I had to have a little jab there. It's just been picked up again, hasn't he? But look, yeah, 141 points as an average per game blew me out of the water because you associate those mids like Ashcroft and some of those really, really big boys with averages like that. But that's really, really impressing me. And look, if you can have a red hot preseason and put his hand up, I don't think there's any reason for Vossi not to select him. But as you mentioned, Janath, come round one, if he's in our sides, he's just going to be a really easy, D8, D7 lock for us, I think.
Loop him off the bench straight away when we play round one against the Tigers. Put the E on him. See how he goes. If you want to use your emergency loop on a Chesser who may get a game like close to that, perhaps. It's just these are the sort of things to consider. I guess the other thing is Spills get excited when Elijah Sardis debuts eventually because he ranked above Cowan, so he's got good scoring potential there.
Yeah, he's gone down though as well, which is so unfortunate. I mean, I don't know. I think he's not available until around round 4, but yeah, he's a bit of a fantasy pig himself. So someone that I actually had him in my team before he got injured. I had him there as that sort of over Will Phillips, but obviously that's changed. But a couple of good picks there, mate. Cowan, that's a superb average, and not far from Ashcroft, which is that says plenty. So yeah, if he plays, we pick him. If he doesn't, then keep an eye out on him, and then we pick him later. I think it's inevitable that he'll find his way into our football team, our Supercoach sides at some point during the season.
Yep, great summary. Great summary. Well, I think that is it for the defenders. That was a bloody good chat. Couple on my watch list now after that. Definitely a couple on my watch list now. But look, we are going to move into the midfielders. And before we actually get into the mids themselves, I wasn't even going to talk about the rucks when it comes to the Blues because I didn't think Pitney or DeConning would be too relevant. But Janath, take us through this, mate. You've done a little bit of research here and you want to have a quick chat about the impact of Pitney on the Carlton midfielders. There's some really interesting numbers that you've come up with here, mate. So can you take us through the table that we see on the screen here?
Sure thing. So we're not in this table. We're not looking at Mark Pitney as a super coach option. That first disclaimer. He's not. He might be a draft option, definitely not a classic option. What we're looking at here is the impact that Pitney playing has on the midfield. And then I'm going to take you guys through the last line, which is a bit interesting because it's sort of contrary to what you might expect. So you can see then when Pitney plays, he's for Sam Doherty, 11 points better average. George Hewitt, 8-point better average. Patrick Cripps, 34 point better average when he plays with Pitney.
Yeah, wow.
And you can probably consider last year, Pitney had the PCL in the Fremantle game against Sean Darcy. Patrick Cripps had a couple of good games against Adelaide and North Melbourne afterwards, but his scoring sort of petered out when Pitney was out. And it was Tom DeConning as the number one ruck. Sam Walsh is an anomaly because he's Sam Walsh. He doesn't really need, I guess he's got the outside role, which is probably the reason for that. In some games, he didn't even have a centre bounce appearance. Like there was the GWS game where he was coming off a half back and he got 141 Supercoach points. So I guess he's a bit mutually exclusive from Pitternet, but still, it's pretty comparable. Adam Chera, 28-point difference with Pitternet compared to without Pitternet.
Wow,
and he's someone we'll be looking at closely coming up. So, moral of the story is, if Pitternet plays, the Carlton midfielders all get a boost. But what's interesting is the last line there, Carlton points for, so that's like goals and points, is that we actually scored more per game without Pitternet, 87.2 compared to 79.5, so about an 8-point difference, so a goal and 2 behind. So you'd think that would mean, so typically when you score more goals and points, that's more score assists for the midfielders. So score assists compose a major part of the Supercoach formula. But if we score less points without Pitternet, but all the mids are doing better, this probably means that Pitternet is facilitating a better clearance, contested possession sort of culture or sort of norm amongst the midfielders, which is what I think is actually happening here. So when Mark Pitternet plays, you're in good hands in terms of getting first possession, first touch to the Carlton mids.
That is absolutely elite and something that I would not considered whatsoever. But everyone, as you said, apart from Walshy, seems better off with Pitto.
And if you ask any Carlton fan, we can't speak highly enough of Pitternet. He's only 25 or 26, I think. Young. He's still a young ruckman, still developing his craft. He doesn't look 25 or 26. He looks way older.
He's a bit of a unit, isn't he? Yeah.
I know there's a funny story going around about him, like, I think it's for the Max Gorn, he's like shred or something like that. But yeah, so he's healthy. He's fully healthy from his PCL. When he's in, you'll trust the Blues midfielders to deliver for you guys.
So I'll tell you what, Janath, the French idiot, he bloody burnt me in 2020. But when you look at these numbers, yeah, kudos to him because, he's benefiting a lot of these midfielders. I don't know. I think I'd pick Chera 100% in draft if I can get my hands on him. Cripper's a tough one just because you got so many. I don't want to say better options, but I think like safer, less speculative picks that you definitely don't want to look at. I don't know how relevant Hewitt is at his price, but I just can't keep my eyes off Doherty there. That's the real upside. The only bloke there with the defense sort of selection. So I don't know. I think he's probably someone that's going to make his way into my team at the end of this podcast. So it's very very bold. So it messes up my structure a bit, but ticks all the boxes. And you think Pitternet's going to play most of the season, Janath? Do they like him ahead of De Koning, or you think they're going to persist with them both? What's the sort of structure looking like there, mate?
Well, internally, I've got Pitternet in the round one as the ruck. He is the guy. We trust him wholeheartedly. Yep. We haven't drafted a ruck since De Koning. He is the guy. We got him from Hawthorn a couple of years back for, I think, a future third or something like that, and have gone with him since. He really helps with the clearance numbers, which is for any Michael Voss coach team, even back in the Brisbane days when he was playing. He's just contested possessions, clearances, get first touch, get first use, and then whatever happens after that happens, right? So, no, fully trust Pitternet. Did you say that you started Mark Pitternet a couple of years ago, Phil?
I didn't start him. I don't know if I said that or not. I'll have to elaborate on that. I did select him at very early on. I think it was like round 3 or something, and did really well. But then he just burnt us. I don't know. He's one of those. Yeah. That was a season where you had you had like Sam Jacobs and Nate Smith.
Great. Oh yeah, 2020.
I just didn't have an R2 to save your life. Yeah. DR picked Laddams. I jumped on as well.
Don't bring the peanut up.
Yeah, the peanut.
Preview, not a Port Adelaide Sydney preview.
He's just buried the hatchet there with Laddams, and I've just sort of reminded him. So sorry there, mate.
Not
You
burying
did
the
wrong
peanut
I'm
there,
later.
never going to bury the hatchet, mate. Never burying the hatchet. He's burnt me for life, mate. Like I've been branded.
Might need
by
to
the
bring up
peanut.
the peanut on the screen at the moment.
Yeah, I should have that animation if I was clever enough. Bring the peanut up there, mate. Let's not talk about the peanut, please. Let's stick
No,
on
but
Pito. But
Mark Pitternet is not a super coach relevant ruckman. That's not his.
No.
That's never been his game. He doesn't cover the ground well enough to get the marks and the contested possessions and all that. He just gets first used to the mids.
Yep.
he just needs to help these blokes to improve their super coach average, and we're pretty happy with Pito. But yeah, that's a really important point again that Janath made. We're not saying select Pito on your side. We're just talking about the positive impact that he can have on, let's be honest, the majority of the Carlton mids that you see here. But look, let's actually get into some of these mids and have a quick chat about. And the first bloke here we've got is George Hewitt. So tell you what, didn't he just have an amazing year last year? Obviously derailed by injury. It was at sort of the later stage of the year. But if you started him like I did, what a pick. What a man. Just on fire. Even I didn't predict the impact that he was going to have, selecting him as a starting pick. I thought, look, if he can go close to a nice 100, that'd be nice. I might need to upgrade him if all things go bad, but he ended up being an absolute keeper. We're forced to trade him out at the end of the day, but a terrific pickup. In my opinion, close to the best pickup from any club last year. There was a few great, like your Brodies were terrific, weren't they? And a few other players did fantastic jobs at their new clubs. But look,
Tyson Stengel.
George Hewitt, is he going to be relevant this year for us, Janath, as a pure midfielder at this price of 613K? Or again, skip over him. He's just not going to be relevant. Too much competition at the price.
Hashtag draft.
Hashtag draft. Hashtag draft. There we go.
Yep.
I don't think he's a classic pick. 613K is a lot of money. Especially Andy Bracewell is like 612K.
Parish around the same.
Yeah.
Parish, Steele, 10K less.
Yeah.
I think McRae is like 10K more. Yeah.
Yep.
So plenty of better picks. But I mean, again, you're seeing this is a common theme. Without Walsh, only one game though, just the Richmond game.
Yeah, small sample size there.
Average, with Walsh 110. So it is a very small sample size, but it's a common theme. Without Walsh, you got the mids getting more posies, all that. But yeah, we'll see more with some of the other picks that may seem a bit better for classic.
Alrighty, let's get on to the next.
Anything to add with Hewitt?
No, look, I think with Hewitt, as soon as I see that price, it just puts me off because I like too many other options, I think. And even if you go down to the lowish to mid 500s, you've got your Titch, your Tom Green types, some of those other breakout type players who I'd also prefer. So for me, is a pretty easy skip, mate. But the next bloke we've got here on the screen, let's be honest, stolen Lachie Neales-Brownlow last year. Apparently, you can just go past the ball, knock out someone head high, and get off and play the next week. But I'm not salty whatsoever with this bloke, Patrick Cripps. Look, I must jokes aside. I
think umpires liked players that pick other blokes off. But
you know, I think he gave his lawyer the Brownlow actually.
Look, I do love the man. I must admit, I was just giving him a little bit of heat there for what he did last year to Kalachi. But look, he is a fantastic player. I must admit, I didn't see this coming. He did have a terrific preseason last year, but for me, that probably still wasn't good enough. I just wasn't too confident. I thought that, and the disrespect I'm going to say here, I thought he may have even been a Supercoach pick of the past. I think that the game may have even gone past him at that stage, but didn't he prove me and many other people wrong last year? This was his start to 2023, a 132, 162, 119, obviously got injured for that 38, missed a week, and then came back with a 139, 138, and a 151. And something that I think does attract me to the Patrick Cripps pick this year is his start to the season. So Richmond, the Dogs, the Hawks, Gold Coast, Port, Fremantle, North Melbourne, Adelaide, and then the Giants. So I think it's a pretty friendly fixture.
Yeah, I think that's last year's fixture. That one?
You're kidding me. Have I done? Do you know what?
I was
have,
going to say,
I
it's
have,
quite familiar, isn't it?
I've
Yeah.
dead set added one thing to this document. It was all of Janath's work. The one thing that I have added was Patrick Cripps's fixture for this year. And I've butchered it by putting in 2022's fixture.
We
Now, we're
can
meant,
just overlay it. It's all right.
That's okay.
we're meant to be a professional
That's
sort
all
of
right. No, it's all
organisation
good.
here, Skills.
there's
We're
no-
meant to be professional. I have
Good, mate.
one
There's
job.
problems on this
I have
podcast, only
one
solutions.
job.
No,
Well,
you're
let's
right,
just
DR.
forget what I said about that. Let's just forget what I said about this. Janath, please take over, mate. I'm just going to shut up now. Take over, great
Look,
man.
I've got the
And let
picture
us
up
know
in
what you
front of
think
me,
about
boys.
Patrick Cripps.
Well, I will say, because that is very similar to last year's fixture. We got Richmond round 1, obviously, the Cats, Giants, North Melbourne on Good Friday, Adelaide in Magic round, or Gather round, sorry. The Saints, West Coast Brisbane. So it's a bit of a mix. You got some easy games, you got some harder games. One of the things that I've brought in for the mids now is versus the top 8 teams versus the rest. So clearly want to see, does he perform better against better teams? So this is 2022's top 8 teams versus the rest. Patrick Cripps, Mr. Consistent, 111, 110 to 111 against both. So there's no major difference there. Again, we're seeing the same pattern without Walsh, 126.5, with him 109.5. 2-game sample size. Walsh doesn't miss many games, so it's very difficult to gauge like how many games you need for an ideal sample size. One of the things that is quite interesting with Patrick Cripps is why I didn't want to pick him at the start of last year, because see, when you pick a Carlton player, you want them to do well because that means your team will win. But you also, if you don't, you also want them to do well for Supercoach if you have them. But sometimes they don't play well, the team loses, and you get a poor Supercoach score. So I didn't start Cripps last year. I brought him in. I brought him in for the bloody Hawks game. Got 119. Did a hammy in the first quarter. In the next week, traded him out because I didn't want to cope with the same thing I was talking about round 1. Then brought him in again for the 138 and all the rest of the scores and his suspension and everything. He's close to suspension. That was a nightmare. But no, he's a gun bloke. Got married in the off season. So I think if you want a pod, it's crazy to say that Patrick Cripps following the Brownlow year could be a pod. I've got there in the dot point that I hope there's not a Brownlow slump. Like, seriously, can we not go there? Sort of thing. He didn't average like Lockie Neal's 140 for there to be a substantial slump. But I mean, like, Patrick Cripps, he's a gun. So hopefully he can either get to 111 or go a little bit more. I do think there's a couple of midfielders that pose better value around that price, but you can't go if he can replicate the early form from 2022, starting from the 132 onwards. That'd be crazy. He'd be a really good player for Supercoach sides. What do you think, Spills? Considering him at all?
Well, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because there's a lot of also speculation on if he can actually back it up and how Carlton going to go this year. What I really like is the average that he has in wins in addition to the losses. That's what sort of gets me. And look, without Welsh, look, that's another sort of small sample size. Like 126 looks good only in the 2 games though. So look, can he back that up as well? I don't think I'm bold enough to start him as much as I love him as a pick. But if he's going well and he's in good form, or he drops a bit in price after a pretty ordinary game, he's someone I'm definitely going to pick up at some point, most likely. What's his buy, Janath? Because obviously that's something you got to sort of work around as well. And I am looking at picking a few Carlton players this year already. So
I think we have the last buy. Fairly certain we do. Yeah, we have the last buy. So it makes sense to start a Carlton player because the last buy doesn't really matter. Because you just upgrade from the guys that have already had their buy, and you come to the last buy, you got a couple of guys out. Everyone will have a couple of guys out. So I don't think it really matters how many Blues you have, but if I just had a look there, you've also got North, the Bulldogs, Giants, Port Adelaide. There's some fairly Supercoach relevant players in that mix. So that's something to consider. Bulldogs, yeah. So you got your Bonds, McRae's, North Melbourne, Gota, all the other
Yep.
rookies, GWS, Classic,
I think you
Tom
get rid of
Green,
Goda by
Cog.
then.
Yeah, you probably would.
Mm.
But Rosie, Lysette, for those that have
Yeah,
got
that
Port
hurts too.
Adelaide
Yeah.
players, Butters.
Or Butters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a
Got to
bit to
consider
consider.
that too. So
But I
One
wouldn't,
thing-
because it's the last buy, I wouldn't put too much weight on how many you have.
yeah.
That's a good
Yeah.
point with the last boy. One thing I like is the stats there in the wins column. So 117.6 from 11 wins. Certainly that win column goes up this year. Certainly we see, well, I'm predicting 14 plus. But I think it also does go to show that when Cripper plays really well, Carlton have a much better chance of winning, obviously. But I think that's another positive sign. You know, Walsh is going to be out for the start of the season. We compare those averages there. Again, it's only a data set of 2 games, so we take that maybe with a bit of a grain of salt. But I'm predicting Carlton to be a bit more successful this year, really push for finals. Could they be a top 4 side? I don't think there's any reason why they can't be. Bit of competition there, but I definitely think at worst, Carlton finish at the lower end of the 8, in my opinion anyway. So I actually think there's a few positive signs for the Patrick Cripps pick, and I don't think he's going to be in, let's say, more than 10% of sides. I don't know what his current ownership is at the moment, but I think a lot of people are going to be looking for the Miller types, your Olivers, and some more popular, I suppose, names that have maybe not had slumps like Cripps has in the last few years. Had a great year last year, but I think people still are a little bit scared of what he produced the couple of years before that. And there's reasons for that. Some off-field issues and lots of stuff going on with his partner, I believe, and obviously carrying lots of injuries. So all in all, I think there is a little bit of meat on the bone with this pick. And I don't think he's going to have a Brownlow slump. I think he's really going to try to carry Carlton on his back. And that's another, I suppose, point we have to make as well. He doesn't really have to do that these days, does he? He's got plenty of other players around him now that can really take a step forward, and they don't have to really rely on him to really carry the team on his shoulders. So, Janath, give us a yes or no. Well, that's
if he's got Mark in there, we saw the averages.
Well, and that's the thing. So we've got Pitney back, Walsh out for the start of the season, and we're predicting more wins for Carlton. Tick, tick, tick. If we're going by this data and making a bit of an educated guess. So give us a yes or no, Janath. Should we be considering Patrick Cripps or not?
Yes, but I'm not starting him. I can't go through that again.
I agree.
Yeah, so he's definitely a pick you can have. Great pod, honestly. He's a pod that he's not exactly, he's a pod that people know. You got pods that people they're out hidden, right? But this is a pod out in the open. Everyone knows what he can do. It's just the question marks. There's can he repeat that? Can he go without getting a short-term injury? That sort of thing. So yeah. I'd highly consider it. But yeah, it's one of those things where you really got to back your gut. Those that back their gut after seeing the Melbourne preseason game got vindicated. And yeah, so because you're not going to trade Patrick Cripps in round 2. If you believe he's going to go off against Richmond and Geelong, then go for it. Start him.
Yeah, I think we can snap him up for 570 or something later down the track. Yeah. When he has
a bad game here and there.
Yeah. He does gives you a couple of 80s. I think once he gets the higher break even, drops to that sort of 550, 570. I think that's the sort of time we snap him up. But yeah, I agree with you, Janath. I like the pick, but he's not in my starting team.
And just quickly as well, I'm pretty sure that for the first 11 weeks, he has a fair few early games as well. So it might be a pretty nice vice captaincy option. If you've got someone like Oliver who's got some of those later games, I think he could also be a really sneaky vice captaincy pick. And given the fact that we're thinking that he's going to be a pod going into this season, having a great vice captain who is a pod, not many other teams have with those early games, coming up against some opposition that may leak some midfield points, I think there is a lot to like about that as well. But look,
have you found his perfect match, Dia?
Sorry, repeat that. Sorry, mate.
Have you found his perfect match?
Well, at the moment, he is looking all right with some of the doggies boys at this stage. So I think if you're running like a Bont or a McRae, he may actually look pretty friendly there. But I haven't got all the captain's videos out, have I? I've got them already, all pumped out, ready to go. So I'll tell you what, the next one Janath will get is the Cripper one, because I think he could be really relevant as a vice captain. But we definitely will find Cripper's perfect match, mate. We'll go to quickly Sam Walsh now. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of discussion here, to be quite honest, because we know that he's going to be out for the first few rounds. But we can see there in wins, in losses, again, he scores well, 114 in wins, drops down by 7 points in losses there. We can see there's not a huge difference between top 8 teams and the rest. And then we've got the more than 50% CBAs, goes around that 114. And then a little bit lower when he goes less than 50%. Maybe just quickly on Walsh, are you expecting him to get less CBAs this year, Janath, with some of the other players that can enter that midfield mix?
I think that Adam Chera, because Chera and Walsh play similar roles, but Chera, you don't want to see Adam Chera coming off a halfback sort of thing.
Yeah,
so I think, so I think Adam Chera will take some of those CBAs. You can see that when Walsh has under 50% CBAs, he still averages 108. Like he had, I still remember that GWS game, the first time we went to Giant Stadium, he got 141 and he was playing off of halfback, like coming off halfback, but to the stoppages, he's a jet. So it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if he came back earlier than like round 4, round 5. He's superhuman, mate. Both you guys can see that, know that.
Yeah, different.
We'll see what happens. Look, if he returns to the side,
upgrade target,
comes out a couple of really nice scores, and yeah, look, who knows? We could look to get him in, but certainly not going to be a starting pick, given the fact that he will be missing the opening part of the season. But
draft, I reckon.
This is a man here. This is a man here. Now, this man may be more relevant for draft, but I'm even slightly excited as a potential value pod in Classic, and it's Adam Chera. So in 18 games, look, certainly didn't set the world on fire, an average of 91.6. He comes this year at a price tag of 504K. Tell us a little bit about Adam Chera, Janath, and whether or not you think that he could potentially take the next step, like maybe an Anderson, a Warner, or even someone like a Tom Green.
Just before we go on, I just want to mention with Sam Walsh, if he does come back around round 4, has a couple of not so good couple of games when he first comes back, and then he pumps out a 110, for instance, perfect upgrade target. Round 8, round 9, when we start getting our teams together, that could work perfectly for our Supercoach teams. But on Adam Chera, there's a lot in here that really excites me. The first thing I think about as a Blue supporter is how Adam Sard sort of transformed 20.5 points up, like a spike from his first season in 2021 to last season 2022. All off season, I'm thinking Adam Chera is going to have this similar spike. He's played some really good halves and then just petered out. He hasn't really put together good games. I'm not sure if you guys watched the Carlton Collingwood game round 23 last year, but his third quarter was reminiscent of a Chris Judd third quarter back in the day. He had one of the best third quarters I've seen all season. Yeah. And you can see that when he's playing without Walsh, again, 2-game sample size, 129.5 compared to 86.9, which, disclaimer, does include that injury affected 5 where he played like 3 minutes and then got subbed out. So what is that? That's 43 points.
It looks good.
Now you're not expecting that, but it's backed up by the CBAs. When he has more than 50% CBAs, the average is 106.3 in 12 games, big sample size. In 18 games, but under 50% CBAs, just 62.3. Now, if we expect him to take that step in terms of the number of CBAs he has, especially without Walsh, it just makes it's starting to make a lot more sense to one, definitely pick him in draft, but does he become a classic option now?
The one thing I have a problem with Adam Chera is sort of that price, because I think if you're paying 500K, you probably want to have him all season, and clearly he's going to have a negative impact when inevitably Walsh returns to the team. So I think there's it's great without him, but yeah, it's only a matter of time before he does come in. It sort of affects you. If it was like in BBL, you'd pick him for the short because it's such a short term. If he was a BBL player, the same sort of those players like those quick cash cows, and you get him in for a week or two and you trade him. I think there's those sort of vibes. I could see Chera scoring probably almost averaging 120 in the first 5 weeks or however long it's going to take for Welsh to return back into the side. But I think as soon as he does, I reckon Chera's that man that's going to be pushed out back onto that wing, and I think he'll have some really good third quarter stints, as you said, Janath, because he's clearly got the potential to absolutely turn it on, but also, yeah, the downside is pretty bad, that 86.9 with Welsh. And also Doherty coming into the midfield. I just don't think the minutes are going to favour him that much. But in draft, I'm 100% jumping on. He was one of my better selections in my draft league last year. I did have him. And before he got injured, he was fantastic. But in Classic, boys, I think I do respect the selection. But, not for me, I don't think.
Yeah, this has caught me off guard, to be honest. Again, similar to Sard, one of those blokes I'll just really skip past. But this could be a really sneaky selection. I agree with you, Spills, the fact that if you're selecting him at over 500K, you're looking for him to be a keeper for the whole year. And I've got some pretty big question marks on whether or not he can be even a top 15. Don't get me wrong, if those CBAs go to the 70% mark for some reason, if there's some huge injury crisis in the Carlton midfield, and it looks like he's going to be, and I hope not, Janath, mind you, I hope not, mate. Don't want to jinx anything here. But if there was absolute carnage there, and he pretty much had some guaranteed minutes in there, and they were nice minutes, then certainly something I would consider. But at this stage of the season, I just can't see him being a top 15 mid, and I'm not paying up 500K for that, but certainly a sneaky draft selection, and something we're actually going to look to get into a little bit more this year. Janath was mentioning draft. I think it was when we were actually talking about Chera the other night, mentioning draft. So I think we're going to get a super coach with our regulars draft going on. We have the regulars league each year in classics, so very much looking forward to getting into the draft. But Janath, final thoughts on Chera, mate?
Yeah, I agree with both what you guys say. Just one thing is that, again, with that midfield rotation, even when Walsh comes back in, he's not going to get phased out for Walsh. Walsh can probably play more wing than Chera can as well. So it'll be playing, I think there'll be about a 60-40 split in terms of favouring Chera, because Walsh can play so many roles, and he just covers the ground so well. But yeah, certainly, definitely more of a draft pick. But even when I was going through the stats, it does tempt you really to think about him in Classic because of the potential upside. And if he takes a 91 average higher like Ansar did, 20.5 points, that's 111. Could he do us, George Hewitt?
There's the potential. And I think another thing we haven't mentioned is, and this isn't the way it always works out, but simply natural progression. We know that he was an early draft pick, a really talented junior. So I suppose our expectations for Chera as a player, not necessarily as a Supercoach selection, but as a player, really start to rise as well, due to the fact that he's a really, really talented player. Well, great discussion on Chera. Let's get into a couple of rookie price players here. So the first one we'll take a look at is Ollie Hollands here. So obviously the brother of Elijah Hollands, an absolute gun, and I think a bit of a breakout potential this year. I wouldn't have the guts to go there myself, but super talent. We know that his brother's obviously been dealing with a lot of injury in the first stages of his AFL career. But you've got here, Janath, that he actually won the 2K time trial at the draft combine. A pretty nice score there. Third-ranked Supercoach scorer at the National Champs, 114 points, just over 23 possessions, and close to 7 marks as well. Good chance to debut you've got here, especially if O'Brien and Akers have a couple or bad games in a row. Tell us about what you think Ollie Hollands' chances of debuting early are, mate, and whether or not you think he may be a Supercoach relevant selection for us this year.
It's very tough to gauge the wings right now. I think Vossi goes with the tried and tested lob 8. Well, I say tried and tested. We got Akers across to play on the wing. We're not going to not going to have him coming off half back or anything like that, you'd think. So I reckon we start off that way because, again, Vossi doesn't really necessarily blood the youngsters in round one. He definitely won't be starting as the sub, which is something that Carlton did a lot last year, is have a runner as the sub, like someone that can use their legs a lot. Like Matt Cottrell was the sub in a handful of our games, but I don't think Vossi is that dog to have a debutant as the sub.
Oh, I hate it. I hate when that happens.
It's terrible.
Yeah, can't stand
but
it.
at
One of
least
my
this year
bugbears.
they will get a game. They will play because there's a tactical sub. I think they have to come on, don't they? Like you can't just have an unused tactical sub, right?
It doesn't really make sense to me. You need those fresh legs on, don't you? Even if it's a little bit later in the game, I suppose.
Yeah, you
It would
have
make
someone
sense
on.
to get him on. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Lob, the sub point that I have there is that Nunes, Lockie O'Brien is Lob, and Matt Cottrell. There was a bit of a merry-go-round for I think like round 6 to 9. Carlton supporters were eyed because every single week you have one of the wings coming out and one of the wings coming in. It's like just get two consistent wings playing. So if there's a couple of bad games for Lob, probably more so for Lob because he's not as highly paid sort of thing compared to Akers. Definitely, Ollie Hollins has been winning our time trials internally as well. He's doing really well. And that flows into Jackson Binns, who's also come in second or third. We took 2 wings and Cowan with our first 3 picks, and then a young key forward called Harry Lemmy as our 4th pick, and those were our 4 picks. So you can clearly see that speed on the wings was a high priority area for the Blues in the national draft. And Hollins is one of them. Good chance to debut early, 162.3K. I don't know what his upside is because he won't be playing inside. He won't be playing off halfback. He's a wing. Can you guys think of many wings that have done well as rookies in years gone by, especially at 162K?
It's not normally a friendly position, is it? Dersma?
Yeah.
Dersma?
I like this selection, Janath. I think if I was Vossi, I would probably 100% play him over Lockie O'Brien. I just don't really rate him that much. I don't know what your take on Lockie is, but look, I just feel like he's sort of gifted a lot of free kicks, ducks his head, just sort of don't know about his decision making, just sort of kicks it to a contest. I don't really see anything sort of unique about him. Where I think how pivotal is it if you can win a 2K time trial? I mean, look what Nick Dacos is doing right now. He won the Collingwoods, and it shows. There's no surprise about that, and what sort of impact that has. And that's why I think he should play round 1 because he's proving that he has the capacity to run out a whole game. So endurance is key. We saw that with Welsh in his first season. A lot of sort of similarities there. And great sort of role model. His big brother and Elijah. So look, I don't mind this selection. I think he's more than capable of averaging a 65 to 70 in the midfield. But it's a matter of if he plays or not. Do we pick him? I'm not quite sure. Someone to definitely watch. Somebody I'll most likely do a rookie review on. But I do like this selection, and the numbers are handy. And I think the moral of the story here is, boys, that I think I'd much rather Hollins in the team over O'Brien, but whether Carlton agree with that is another story. But really like this young man. He's got a lot of talent and plenty going for him. So hopefully.
Let's say I don't disagree. I don't disagree with your take on Lockie O'Brien. Personally, he's in big games. He's very fumbly, but he showed enough progression last year. That I think he gets first chance. On one of the wings. Because he didn't do anything wrong for it not to happen. Like, I'd like to see Hollins get blooded over O'Brien. That'd be perfect. I just don't think it's going to happen.
No, I don't think so either.
And if Hollins is kept out of the team by O'Brien for the season, that's very good news for Carlton. It means that Lockie O'Brien has had a stellar season because that's how highly we rate Ollie Hollins.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And Jackson Binns is going to struggle to get a game because he's behind Akers, Lob, Hollins, and Cottrell when he's healthy. Cottrell has a stress fracture in his foot as well, something that Carlton fans are overly familiar with now, these stress fractures in feet. But possible late season debut, just depends on the depth ahead of him. He does have DPP, which is handy. Not sure how much that plays into it. I guess the other thing to consider with Ollie Hollands, we had this chat last year, DI, is he's priced above, for instance, a Will Phillips. So do you go with Hollands? And then if you need to go down to Will Phillips because, like, say they both debut, you go with Hollands, has a bad game where scoring potential is not what you think it is, you go down to Will Phillips. So do you do it the other way if you have the money? Those are just key considerations just to keep in mind.
It's a really good point. And that I was actually going to mention something similar to what you just brought up, because when I look at most of the midfields that I see, we've got probably Hopper, Ashcroft, and then Phillips as that M6 to M8. Depends what people are doing. Are you going with, 4 of the big boys and maybe a Mitchell type or a Green type, one of those mid to low 500s? I think it's hard to fit in someone at Holland's price in your starting midfield, just with the way lots of teams are structuring up. I don't know if you can go with all of Hopper, Ashcroft, Phillips, and someone like a Hollands. I've seen Phillip in so many sides as well, which I don't get personally, but that people can do what they want. I don't get that pick, but yeah, for me, if we were missing someone like a Will Phillips and someone like Hollands did debut round 1, I'd definitely look at it a little bit more, but I think there's probably a little bit much competition at the price. And we can even go down to someone 123k like an Oscar Baker that may be looking to get a wing role at the Dogs this year. If I'm comparing the two, I'm probably going with that mature type player like a Baker, even though, look, Hollands has done everything he can, hasn't he? He's won the time trial, looking great, smashing up the preseason. Can't really fault what the young man's doing, but that price probably does put me off just slightly. And Bins, I haven't even heard of, to be quite honest. But look, it'd be really handy. We don't want all of our rookies debuting early. We want players such as your Bins to possibly come in mid-season, got DPP there. If he can string a few games together, be an awesome downgrade, wouldn't it? So we can then make an upgrade somewhere else. So they're probably my thoughts. Anyone want to add anything else to this midfield discussion before we finish up?
Yeah, I think you summed that up really well, DR. I have Will Phillips at M8. So I just don't possibly see a way of getting him into my starting team, whether he debuts or not. And also, he doesn't have – he's going to play forward as well, most likely, but he doesn't have mid-forward DPP, which I'd love to select him. I could even consider him over a Josh Bruce down forward if he had forward DPP. But, lads, he doesn't. He's a midfielder only. So it's going to make it quite difficult to start him. Maybe we kind of want to back against him in playing quite early. Maybe it would be more beneficial in a Supercoach sense if we got Ollie Hollands around like round 8 or something when we're doing our first sort of downgrades, and you can go Will Phillips down to him. That might be a little bit more better, but yeah, if he's named round 1, I don't think I'll select him just on that. Yeah, it's a really good point you made there. Don't mind it.
Josh Bruce is really interesting. I don't have him personally. I haven't seen many sides with him because he's down back now, right?
Yeah, he's doing an intercept role. Yeah, so he played all of his juniors down back, and he just hasn't really found a spot in the forward line. Clearly, he's been struggling at the level. There's a lot of forwards there now. So, yeah, I think he's going to be playing off half-back as a sort of intercept defender. Not sure what that's going to look like, but at 160k, I'm going to take my chances, and I think he's a really nice placeholder. At F6, I'd much rather field him over a Van Ruin or a Fergus Green or one of those sort of blokes. So, just sort of a placeholder.
Really interested to see how they manage their tools because there's just so many of them. I know it's a bit off the Carlton stuff, but this just all plays into it. Is like if you've got a Bruce in, does that sacrifice having the money for a Holland? So it'll be really interesting to see how the Dogs line up their plethora of key talent now.
Well, I think that's pretty much done us for the mid-discussion. Nothing to add there, fellas. Jump onto the forward line. Tell you what, we've got one forward. We've actually got one forward. Again, I don't know how relevant he's going to be. But David Cunningham. So obviously didn't play in 2022. Comes at a discounted price, given that factor, 163,800. Is a mid-forward. Janath, is David Cunningham going to be relevant for us this year? I don't believe he was in your round 123, which means you obviously won't be in your fully fit 23 either. So any thoughts on David Cunningham, just maybe for those people that may have had him on the watch list anyway, mate?
I did I did in fact have a note on him that he's still on a modified program. He's got season averages that are above. I think averaging 66 at 163K would be enough to get him 150K price rise. But it wouldn't surprise me, one, if he's first brought through the VFL. But he's missed so much footy that you can't risk putting him through an AFL game straight away. And then the problem for Supercoach relevance is that he's brought in as a tactical sub before being used in the starting 22. He won't play a full game right from the get-go. He'll probably be used in stints, which is something you can do with the tactical sub, because you can bring them on at a specific point in time. All right, Cunners, we'll give you a quarter, get on 3/4 time, but he doesn't have enough time to score 67 or whatever he needs to make 150K. So even if picked, would probably avoid him. He'll probably play a role in the wing, float in between half forward and a wing, that sort of thing. So I wouldn't. He's probably not someone that he can be on the watch list. If there's no one else to downgrade to, you might just have to downgrade to him. But he's not someone that I'm going out of my way to facilitate the team for.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yep. Spills, nothing to add on Mr. Cunningham.
No, not really. I'm not going near him. I just think, it's just way too injury prone for me. I think there's better selections of that price, like the man we just touched on in Bruce. So, he won't be in my team. We go around the room, boys, and how many Carlton players are we looking at starting in round one? So I'll start with you, Janath. Like, how many of those blue baggers are in your classic Supercoach team coming into round one?
Right now, I've got Sard. I do have Sard.
Yeah, I'll have him in about 10 minutes.
And I have Lockie Cowan in. DR?
I've got the one which is Cowan on the bench at the moment. After the news of Williams going down came through, I thought, well, who's going to look to maybe fill that void? And Lockie Cowan is that cheap 117K mid. I must admit, I didn't know what his junior averages were. That's just even sold me a little bit more now, Janath. But look, Doherty has been in and out of my side for a large majority of the preseason. It's been either Doherty, Dawson, Stewart, or Sicily. I've gone with usually 2 out of those 4. One will come in, another one will go out. I am pretty interested in Patrick Cripps as a pod if I decide to go somewhere a little bit different. And obviously the 2 boys down back, Doherty and Sard. Oh, I tell you what, you're giving me a lot to think about. I'll probably skip Terra in Classic, have a big focus for him come draft night. But that's probably...
Everyone's gonna be gunning for him. We might go pick one at this rate.
Oh, no. We'll just eyeballing each other. You're going to go him now, trying to play that poker face. We'll see how we go there. Yeah. How about you, Spills? What are you thinking in regards to Carlton's starting picks?
I've got 2 on my team, not currently, but I will. I think I'm going to get rid of Hayden Young for Sard and find 50K somewhere. I think I'll be able to do that quite comfortably.
Wow,
and I do have Cowan as well. So just the 2 for me, boys. Yeah, he's a bit of a cheat, a bit of a trader, but I'll give him the benefit of doubt, and he deserves a bit of love. I can't hold a grudge forever, I guess. So might have to give him a bit more respect.
One other thing that we should mention here is, just like we saw with Pitternet, that he's not Supercoach relevant, but he makes other Supercoach relevant. Highly expect Corey Durden and Jesse Motlop to become one of the best small forward duos in the league this year. Means more goal assists, more goals, more centre bounce appearances. If there's more goals, there's plenty of non-direct Supercoach implications possibly with an improved brand of footy this year, even more for the Blues.
Yeah.
It's going to be an exciting year, isn't it? It's going to be an exciting year.
They're going to be fun.
Is there anything we need to add on the forward line discussion there, or pretty happy with that, boys?
I think so.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone else, is there?
I guess Harry Lemmy, key forward. He's probably next in line if one of Harry Mackay or Charlie Kerner, God forbid, was to go down. So he's just one to keep in mind that he exists. He's very developmental. Brody Kemp has been training as a defender, so he's not going to be the one to fit in that key forward role. We might just bring in one of the things I'm not sure about is if we play two ruckman or not. Tom DeConning, a lot of people, half the people are saying we can't play two ruckman and JSOS, Jack Sylvan in the same side. Others are saying it's a point of difference for us, so it's just another thing to monitor as we get closer to round one.
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, let's get out of these slides so I can see your beautiful faces a little bit clearer there. Janath, I was amazed with that document that you sent through, mate. You know, we were talking last night. You've whipped this thing together. So your knowledge, not only on Carlton in general, but Supercoach is absolutely phenomenal, mate. What I'd really love to invite you on for is our strategy podcast, because I know that strategy is a big part of your Supercoach game. It's you love looking at your numbers. You are a data man. But when it comes to the strategy side of things, you tend to think outside of the box a little bit. And I remember when I had you on early last year, it was one of my most popular preseason videos, had a few thousand people tune in for that. So if you're up for it, mate, we'd love to have you back as soon as possible for that one, legend.
Yeah, no worries. We appreciate coming on today. Looking forward to more chats with you boys. And yeah, totally anything strategy, that base. Supercoach is a numbers game at its heart. The players do their thing, but we've got to figure out how to manage our finances.
Exactly right. All about our money, spending wisely. And I think that's going to be a bit of a theme this year. I'm seeing a lot of teams going with a bit more of a mid-price madness structure this year. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Guns and Rookies approach goes. It's a little bit scary for those traditional Guns and Rookies coaches to enter the dark side of the mid-price madness.
I don't know. Can it happen 2 years in a row? That's what I'm worried about. I don't think last year's anywhere near replicable. Last year was an anomaly of like the highest degree.
Well, that's something that we must have a chat about come the strategy podcast is, do we go mid-price? Is it still safe to go Guns and Rookies? There's a lot of question marks here at the moment. So really, really looking forward to that one, mate. Spills, how are you feeling? Still a little bit seedy, mate? You had a Barocca?
I need one.
Something fatty into you, or?
I need one. The thing I didn't do was I had quite a late lunch, and I didn't really eat anything before I went to bed, which was a real rookie mistake. If I had smashed something down before bed, I would be up and raring for this podcast. I don't know how noticeable it is. It's hard, but I've tried my best today. I pulled through. I think not too bad. So. Yeah, buddy. Janath,
you've been great,
mate. You surprised me. Like, obviously, first time meeting you. You seem like an absolute legend. We'd love to have you. Also on the Saw Play podcast. So I think you'll fit right in on that. Just heaps of banter, heaps of rubbish, and it's just a bit of fun, mate. And my expectation when DR said that there was a little PowerPoint. I was like, oh yeah, that'll be all right. I'll dabble in, have a look. But I'm absolutely stunned by the amount of preparation and work that you put into this one. And it means a lot to myself and DR. And I think you've covered it really well and done a cracking job. So it's been a pleasure to be a part of this Carlton podcast. I did miss out on a couple of them, DR. I'm spewing. I missed out on the Geelong one with the legend Shorty, but I'm very happy. Maybe not the best condition, but I'm still happy I made it for this podcast. So it's been a pleasure, lads, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Oh, for sure. We'll definitely get Shorty on the sword play as well. We might go a double hit here with Janath and Shorty, mate. I'll tell you what.
I think so.
That'd be a bit of a loose podcast.
I've never met Shorty. I would love that. I would love that. He seems a good bloke.
All four of us even. I think it'd be great, just bouncing off each other. And I think our Saw Play podcast is it's one of the least serious podcasts. It's kind of like the front bar of Supercoach. It's just a bit of rubbish. It's not your footy classified type like analysing the game. It's just a bit of like venting your frustration from players that have burnt you, like a little bit of like high picks and like just a bit of fun. So I'm actually really looking forward to getting back into that. We missed out last year. We just didn't really have the time to put it together. But in 2023, lads, I'll be making a little bit of time and I'm dedicating.
I reckon
that'd be good.
Absolutely. Well,
Janath, cheers for having me on, boys. Yeah.
Cannot thank you enough. Cannot thank you enough. Before we do let you go, mate, let us know where we can find you on your socials, mate. I know that you're on Twitter We've got some great blokes on there. So where can we find you on
I'll give you a
Twitter, mate?
follow.
Just in case anyone wants to follow, because I think your follow account is going to skyrocket a little bit after people listen to
You
this
helped
one,
me
mate,
last
here
time.
today.
Got the followers, got the DMs rolling. But now you can follow me at my name Janath Fernando 4, at Janath Fernando 4. Yeah, that's the main way to find me if you want to discuss anything Supercoach. Know that a couple of boys from last year, in close contact with them, helping them out with their teams, helping them out, talking about life. You know, it's not just about Supercoach. Sometimes there's more to it than just a
Exactly
game.
right.
So just like we are here, boys.
100%, mate. 100%. Well, thank you very much, Spills. Thank you very much, Janath. Always great catching up with you, legends. And thanks very much for watching, guys. We will be coming out with another team preview very, very soon. Plenty more to go. But for now, take care. See you soon in the next one. Cheers,
See you,
guys.
lads.